She showed up at my door, barely standing. She whispered, it was my sister-in-law. She said my baby didn't belong. I called my brother and said, it's time. Do what Daddy taught us. The morning I found my daughter-in-law collapsed on my back porch. I had been up since 4 o'clock making biscuits from scratch. That is what I do when I cannot sleep. I roll dough. I cut circles. I press my palms into something soft and forgiving. My husband used to say my biscuits tasted like patience. He has been gone 11 years now, and I still make them the same way. I heard something hit the wood planks outside my kitchen door. Not loud, more like a sack of laundry dropped from a short height. I turned off the faucet and stood still. At my age, you learn to listen before you move. I opened the door and there was Maya. She was on her hands and knees, her left arm pressed against her side, her breathing shallow and fast like a dog in summer heat. Her lip was split. Her right eye was nearly swollen shut. She looked up at me and the one eye that could still open all the way was full of something I had not seen since I worked the night shift at County General 30 years ago. It was the look of someone who has accepted that they might not survive. Mama Ruth, she whispered. That is what she called me. Not her own mother's name for me, but the name my son's children would someday use. She had started calling me that 3 months after she and my son Marcus got married, one Sunday after church, completely without announcement. I had been so moved I had to pretend to look for something in my purse. I got her inside. I did not call an ambulance right away because she grabbed my wrist with both hands the moment I reached for the phone. Not yet, she said. Please, just let me tell you first. I sat down across from her at my kitchen table and I listened. Maya was 36 years old. She was a pediatric nurse. She had a laugh that arrived before she did, filling whatever room she was about to walk into. She had been married to my son Marcus for 4 years. They lived 20 minutes from me in a neighborhood with wide streets and old oak trees. They had been trying for a baby for 2 of those 4 years. And 3 weeks ago, they had finally gotten the news they had been praying for. She was 8 weeks along. She told me that the night before Marcus had been called in for an emergency overnight shift at the hospital where he worked in hospital administration. She had been home alone. Around 9 o'clock, there was a knock at her door. It was her sister-in-law, my daughter. Her name is Celeste. She is 51 years old, my eldest. And for reasons I have spent decades trying to understand and have ultimately failed to, she had never accepted Maya. Not from the first dinner I hosted after Marcus brought Mia home to meet the family. Not at the engagement party. Not at the wedding where she gave a toast so cold and brief it left a silence in the reception hall that the DJ had to cover with music. She had built her dislike into something architectural over the years, something with load-bearing walls. Maya told me that Celeste had come to the door with a bottle of wine and a smile and said she wanted to make peace. She said she had been thinking about things and she wanted to do better. Maya, because she is the kind of woman she is, let her in. They sat in the living room. Celeste poured 2 glasses and pushed one toward Maya, who declined because she had not yet told anyone about the pregnancy. Celeste drank and talked about the family and about how much she missed, how things used to be. And Maya said she felt hopeful for the first time in years about this relationship that had cost her so much quiet grief. Then Celeste sat down her glass and her face changed. She said, you know, Marcus only married you because he felt sorry for you. He told me that himself. Maya said she did not respond. She was trying to stay calm. Celeste said, you don't fit in this family. You never have. And now you're sitting in my mother's son's house pretending this is yours. Mia stood up and asked her to leave. What happened next? Mia told me slowly, her hand pressed against her ribs, her voice dropping to nearly nothing. Celeste did not leave. She moved toward Maya in a way that felt threatening and Maya backed into the hallway and Celeste followed her and they struggled and Celeste shoved her hard against the wall and then shoved her again and Maya fell on the stairs, tumbled down 4 steps, and hit the floor of the entryway. She lay there and Celeste stood over her and said the words that Maya would repeat to me in my kitchen. She said, you were never supposed to be part of this family and whatever is growing inside you doesn't belong here either. Maya went completely still. She did not yet know that she had told her anything, but somehow Celeste knew about the pregnancy. Celeste left. She pulled the front door shut behind her like someone leaving a room where nothing important had happened. Maya had lain on the floor for a long time. Her phone was in the kitchen. She could not tell if something inside her was broken. She was afraid for the baby. She was afraid that if she called Marcus at work, he would confront Celeste before she could think clearly about what to do, and that it would become a war right in the middle of the best news of their lives. So, she drove herself to my house instead. She had driven 20 minutes with a cracked rib and a swollen eye to find a woman making biscuits in the middle of the night. I called an ambulance. She let me this time. I rode with her to the hospital and I sat in a plastic chair in a hallway for 2 hours, and I thought about what I was going to do. Not what Marcus was going to do, what I was going to do. When the doctor came out and told me Maya had 2 cracked ribs, a significant contusion on her eye socket, and that the baby was, thank God, safe, and showing a strong heartbeat, I closed my eyes, and I sat with the relief until it settled. Then I opened them and I took out my phone. I did not call Celeste. I called my brother. His name is Harold. He is 68 years old. He retired from 30 years as a county prosecutor 3 years ago, and he now grows tomatoes in his backyard and plays chess on Tuesday evenings and is, in my personal estimation, the most methodical human being I have ever known in my life. Our father, who raised us alone after our mother passed when I was 9, used to say that Harold did not make a single impulsive decision in his entire childhood. Not one. He would think about whether to take an umbrella the way other people think about changing careers. I told Harold what had happened. I told him slowly and completely and without editorializing the way he had taught me to do when I used to come to him as a girl with a problem. Just the facts first. Ruthie feelings after. When I finished, there was a pause. Harold said, "Where is Celeste now?" I said, "I assumed she was at home." He said, "Has Marcus been told?" I said, "Not yet." I wanted to talk to Harold first. He said, "Good. Don't call Celeste. Don't tell her what Maya told you. Tell Marcus when he gets off shift, not before." "I need to make some calls," I said. "Harold, what are you going to do?" He said, "What Daddy taught us." I knew exactly what he meant. Our father had been a quiet man, but not a passive one. He had believed with absolute conviction that the truth, properly documented and patiently pursued, was more powerful than any lie, no matter how long that lie had been standing. He had once spent 3 years quietly collecting evidence that his employer had been cheating him out of pension contributions. And at the end of those 3 years, he had walked into that company's office with a manila folder and walked out with a settlement that put both his children through college. He never raised his voice. He never made a threat. He simply showed people what he knew. Marcus arrived at the hospital 2 hours later. He had gotten my message. He walked through those double doors and went straight past me to Mia's room without a word. And I sat in that hallway and gave them their time. After about 20 minutes, he came back out and sat down next to me. And he put his face in his hands, and he did not make a sound, but his shoulders shook. And I put my arm around him the same way I had when he was 7 years old and fell off his bicycle. When he lifted his head, he said, "Tell me everything." I told him all of it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I want to go to Celeste's house right now." I said, "No." He looked at me. I said, "You are going to stay with your wife and your child. Harold is handling this. You trust me?" He looked at me for a moment longer and then he nodded, because in his entire life, his mother and his uncle Harold had never steered him wrong. And whatever was left of his rational mind in that moment, understood that. What I did not know yet was what Harold had already found. He called me the next morning at 7:15. I was at the hospital, still in the chair that had become mine, drinking coffee from the vending machine down the hall. Harold had spent the night on the phone. He had called 3 people he knew from his years as a prosecutor, a retired detective, a woman who now worked in family law, and a former colleague who had moved into civil litigation. He had asked them all the same question. If a person entered another person's home under false pretenses and committed a physical assault that resulted in documented injuries and a stated threat regarding an unborn child, what were the options? He had also called a neighbor of Celeste, a woman named Deborah who Harold had known for many years through church, who lived 2 doors down from Celeste, and who it turned out had been watching from her living room window the previous evening when Celeste arrived at Marcus and Mia's house. And again when she left. And Deborah, God bless that meticulous woman, had a doorbell camera that faced the street. The camera had captured Celeste's arrival and departure with timestamps. It had also captured something else. When Celeste got back into her car, she sat in it for a long time before driving away. Long enough for Deborah's camera to record her making a phone call. Long enough, Harold told me for the metadata from that call to be subpoenaed in a civil proceeding. Harold said, "There is a pattern here, Ruthie." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I talked to Marcus this morning before I called you. I asked him some questions about the last 4 years, about incidents, about things Celeste said or did. He was resistant at first because you know how he is. He does not like to think badly of family. But when I asked him specific questions with specific dates, the picture became clear. He told me that Celeste had over the course of 4 years made comments to Maya about her appearance, her background, her professional choices, and her ability to be a proper wife that Marcus had individually dismissed as tactlessness or bad days or old grievances that would eventually fade. Seen together and laid out in order, they looked like something that had been building toward this. Harold said, "When someone hurts your child, you can respond from anger or you can respond from strategy. Anger feels better in the moment. Strategy wins." I said, "Tell me what you need from me." What he needed was for me to sit with Maya the following day and ask her gently and without pressure whether she would be willing to file a police report. He needed her to understand that she had choices and that whatever she chose, he and I and Marcus would support without condition. He also needed me to understand that regardless of what Maya chose, there were other avenues available that did not require her to do anything at all. Maya agreed to file the report. She did it with Marcus' hand in hers and a steadiness that I have thought about many times since. The officer who took her statement was a woman who treated her with the kind of matter-of-fact professionalism that I imagine Maya herself brings to her patients. Celeste was contacted by police 4 days later. I was not there for that conversation. I did not need to be. What I was told secondhand by Marcus, who heard it from the detective Harold, knew. Celeste was genuinely surprised. She had convinced herself in the way certain people do that what she had done was a private matter, a family disagreement, something that would be absorbed and forgotten because it had been absorbed and forgotten before. She had not understood that this time someone was documenting. She retained a lawyer. Her lawyer sent a letter. Harold's friend in civil litigation sent one back that was by all accounts considerably longer. I will not walk through every step of the months that followed because some of it belongs to Marcus and Maya and not to me to share. What I will say is this. My granddaughter was born on a Tuesday in September and she weighed 7 pounds and 2 ounces and she came into the world loud and apparently entirely certain that she had somewhere important to be. Marcus held her first. Then the nurse put her in my arms while Ma slept. And I stood at the hospital window and I looked at this child who had come through so much before she had even taken her first breath. And I thought about my father and his manila folder and his patience. And I thought about Harold making calls at midnight with the focused calm of a man who has spent his life believing that the truth properly handled does not need to shout. Celeste was not present at the hospital. She and Marcus had not spoken in 4 months. She had eventually entered a diversion agreement in the criminal matter that involved mandatory counseling and a period of supervised probation. She had also, in a separate matter that Harold and his civil attorney colleague had set in motion quietly and without drama, been removed from the board of a local charitable organization where she had served for years, an organization that the investigation had revealed had been experiencing some financial irregularities in a fund that Celeste had managed. I had not known about that part until Harold told me. I had not asked him to pursue it. He had simply followed the thread. I said, "Harold, how long did you know about that?" He said, "I had a suspicion for about 2 years." I said, "And you waited?" He said, "I waited until it was necessary. That is what our father taught us. You do not use what you have until you need it. And when you need it, you use all of it." Maya came home from the hospital on a Thursday. I had gone ahead of her and Marcus to get the house ready. I made a meal. I changed the sheets. I set up the little bouncer chair they had bought months ago and had been keeping in the closet because neither of them had wanted to jinx anything. I placed it in the living room by the window where the afternoon light came in long and golden the way it does in September. When they walked through the door, Maya stopped in the entryway, the same entryway where she had fallen, and she looked around the room and her eyes went to the bouncer chair in the light. And she put her face against my son's shoulder and cried in a way that was not sad at all. Her name is Rosalie, after my mother, who I lost when I was 9 and who I have carried every day since, in the specific shape of how I love the people I love. I go to their house every Sunday. I bring biscuits. Rosalie is 4 months old now and she has her father's ears and her mother's laugh, and she regards me with the serious, attentive expression of a person who is making careful note of everything and drawing her own conclusions. I recognize that look. It runs in this family, the real one, the one we built. Some people believe that family is something you are handed at birth, fixed and unalterable, and that you owe it allegiance regardless of what it costs you. I believed something like that for a long time. I smoothed things over and bit my tongue and told myself that time would fix what I was too tired to face. I know better now. Family is not the people who share your name. Family is the people who show up on your porch in the middle of the night, broken and trusting that you will open the door. Family is the brother who makes calls at midnight and follows threads for 2 years and says nothing until the moment it matters. Family is the daughter-in-law who drives herself to your house with cracked ribs because somewhere in her fear she knew she would be safe there. I am 63 years old. I have made a great many mistakes and I have learned from most of them, and the lesson I want to leave you with is the one my father taught me in a kitchen not so different from mine. When someone wrongs the people you love, you do not have to answer with noise. You answer with truth, carefully kept, patiently carried, released at exactly the right moment. And then you go home and you make biscuits and you wait for Sunday and you hold your granddaughter in the September light and you let that be enough because it is. It is more than enough.